Cheon Soo Ho is the heir to a large W corporation who looks like he has everything you could dream of: wealth, power, and looks. However, behind this facade lies a cynical and cold man whose life revolves solely around work and corporate intrigue. He finds it hard to trust people, even his fiancée Yoon Jae-ah, with whom he has more responsibilities than true feelings. One day, during an important meeting with business partners, Soo Ho begins to experience a sudden decline in his health. At first he ignores the symptoms, writing them off as fatigue, but soon realizes that his condition is more serious than it seemed. After undergoing a medical examination, he is given a terrifying diagnosis: an incurable disease that leaves him with only a few months to live. This news stuns Soo Ho, who has always believed that the control of his life was in his hands. Now he faces a harsh reality, realizing that time is something that cannot be bought or stopped. The parallel story of Seol Ji-hyun, an honest and hard-working girl who works several jobs to support her family, develops. Her younger sister, Seol Ji-hyun, also tries to help by working part-time as a waitress. One day, Ji-hyun gets into an unpleasant situation involving restaurant customers. Late at night, she calls her sister, but the conversation cuts off, leaving Ji-hyun in a panic. Ji-hyun rushes to find her sister, and her search leads her to a hotel owned by the Soo Ho Corporation. At the hotel, she finds her sister lying unconscious on the floor next to the pool. It is soon revealed that Ji-hyun is dead, a news that shocks Ji-hyun. Her world comes crashing down as she realizes that she has lost the person closest to her. The police quickly conclude that it was a suicide, but Ji-hyun refuses to believe it, sensing that something more sinister lurks behind her sister's death. As Ji-hyun mourns the loss and tries to put the pieces together, Soo Ho begins to notice strange coincidences. He remembers the night he first felt sick, and how he caught a glimpse of Ji-hyun at a party at a hotel owned by his family. Memories of that encounter begin to haunt him, and he suspects that something terrible happened when he was too busy with his career to pay attention to what was going on around him. Meanwhile, Ji-hyun finds no support from the police or the people around him, but decides to get to the truth on his own. Soo Ho, feeling guilty, decides to help her. Despite his fears and doubts, he feels responsible for what happened that fateful night. He begins to gather information to make sense of what happened, but each new discovery only makes him feel more guilty. After discovering her sister's body, Seol Ji-hyun is plunged into endless thoughts and speculations about what might have happened to Ji-hyun that night. Her grief and despair turn into determination to find out the truth. Despite the police verdict of suicide, Ji-hyun intuitively senses that there is something more behind it. She decides to start her own investigation, beginning by looking for anyone who might have been involved in the events of that night. Meanwhile, Cheon Soo Ho, still shaken by his diagnosis and haunted by the memories of that night's events, tries to continue living his life as usual. However, as each day passes, he finds it harder and harder to ignore the haunting thoughts of his involvement in Ji-hyun's death. Gradually, Soo Ho realizes that he can no longer turn a blind eye to what is happening, especially when he sees Ji-hyun's desperation and determination. Soo Ho decides to take the risky step of contacting Ji-hyun and offering his help. They meet at a cafe, and Soo Ho, trying to hide his confusion and inner pain, offers her support in the investigation. Ji-hyun is initially wary, seeing him only as a cold and arrogant heir to wealth, but she has nothing to lose. Doubt and distrust gradually give way to a desperate hope that Soo Ho can actually help her shed light on the circumstances of her sister's death. As they begin to investigate together, they face new challenges. Ji-hyun finds conflicting testimonies from hotel staff and strange disappearances of CCTV footage. This only strengthens her conviction that Ji-hyun's death was no accident. At the same time, Soo Ho, using his connections and resources, begins digging deeper into his family's company to see how his business can be connected to this tragic incident. With each new discovery, their lives become more confusing and dangerous. Ji-hyun begins to notice that she is being watched, and Soo Ho becomes increasingly aware that someone inside the company is trying to hide the truth. They soon discover that there is much more at stake than just the truth about Ji-hyun's death. It's a conspiracy that could ruin the lives of many people, including themselves. As they try to find answers, Soo Ho and Ji-hyun grow closer, despite their differences and distrust of each other. Soo Ho begins to feel not only guilt for Ji-hyun, but also respect for her resilience and fortitude. Ji-hyun, in turn, gradually sees Soo Ho not just as the heir to a vast fortune, but as someone who is as lost as she is, but willing to risk everything for redemption. Soon, however, Ji-hyun begins to suspect that Soo Ho is hiding something from her. Although he tries to keep his personal problems out of the investigation, she notices his periodic bouts of weakness and fatigue. Without realizing what exactly is going on, she does begin to sense that Soo Ho is playing his own game. Amidst the growing danger and secrets being revealed, Soo Ho decides to finally tell Ji-hyun the truth about his diagnosis. He realizes that his time is running out, and that if he wants to help her, he must do it now while he is still able to make a difference. This candor brings them even closer together, but it also leads to new conflicts and challenges for them to face together. With each new discovery, Soo Ho and Ji-hyun's investigation takes on a darker and darker tone. They realize that a powerful force is working against them, willing to do anything to cover up the truth about Ji-hyun's death. Soo Ho, sensing the mounting pressure, decides to use his influence to help Ji-hyun, despite the risk to his own life and business. In an attempt to protect Ji-hyun, Soo Ho begins to distance himself from her, not wanting to involve her in more danger. He decides to act more secretive and cautious to keep them both safe. However, this only increases the suspicions of Ji-hyun, who feels that Soo Ho is withholding important facts from her. Their relationship heats up, and mistrust gradually escalates into open conflict. Meanwhile, Min Seok, Ji-hyun's boyfriend and corporate lawyer, begins to suspect that Soo Ho is acting in his own interests. Seeing Soo Ho's increasing interference in Ji-hyun's life, he becomes jealous and worried that it might ruin his own plans. Min Seok decides to intervene, but his actions only make things worse when he begins to confront Soo Ho using his legal power and influence in the company. Soo Ho, on the other hand, realizing that his time is running out, decides to follow through. He begins his own investigation within the corporation, trying to find out who is behind the withholding of evidence and manipulation of evidence. Using his connections and resources, Soo Ho faces numerous obstacles, but his determination only grows stronger. He realizes that exposing the truth could be his last chance for redemption, even if it leads to the downfall of his own family. Ji-hyun, seeing Soo Ho drifting away from her, begins her own investigation, relying on her intuition and perseverance. She suspects that someone within the company, or among the people close to her, is playing a double game. Her search leads to unexpected discoveries when she finds evidence linking Min Seok to the events of that fateful night. This discovery shocks her and makes her doubt the people she once trusted. The tension between Ji-hyun and Soo Ho reaches a peak when they accidentally run into each other at the company office. Ji-hyun, furious that Soo Ho is once again trying to hide something important, accuses him of betrayal. Soo Ho, exhausted and weakened by his illness, decides to reveal all his cards to her. He tells her about his diagnosis and that he has almost no time left. This shocking news causes Ji-hyun to rethink his actions and views on Soo Ho, realizing that Soo Ho is really fighting not only for her truth but also for his own redemption. Ji-hyun decides to give him another chance. They make an unspoken truce and agree to work together despite all the disagreements and risks. Their goal is now clear: to find those behind Ji-hyun's death and bring them to justice before Soo Ho's time runs out for good. However, their alliance does not go unnoticed. The secret forces behind the truth begin to act more aggressively. Ji-hyun and Soo Ho find themselves under constant surveillance, their steps are monitored, and their every move could be their last. Despite this, their determination grows and they realize that together they can overcome any obstacle. Now joining forces, Soo Ho and Ji-hyun begin a more active investigation, trying to find key clues that will help them expose those behind Ji-hyun's death. However, the tension between them is far from gone. Although Ji-hyun has realized that Soo Ho is driven by a sincere desire to atone for her sins, she still doubts whether she can fully trust the man who until recently was part of the world that brought her so much pain. Meanwhile, Soo Ho's illness continues to progress, but he stubbornly hides his deteriorating condition for fear that Ji-hyun will see him as weak. He doesn't want his physical infirmity to interfere with their business, so he often secretly visits the hospital to receive treatment that temporarily keeps him functioning. However, these visits become more frequent, and it begins to affect his attentiveness and efficiency. Soo Ho manages to find a key witness, a hotel security guard who saw Ji-hyun leave the party that ill-fated night. The man reveals that after leaving, Ji-hyun rushed to the parking lot, where she was intercepted by an unknown man. This information becomes an important lead, and Soo Ho starts searching for this unknown man, hoping that it will lead them to the truth. Meanwhile, Min Seok begins to feel his control over the situation waning. He realizes that Soo Ho and Ji-hyun are getting closer to the clue and decides to act decisively. Using his position in the company and his knowledge of its shady dealings, he begins to plan how to eliminate the threat posed by Soo Ho and direct suspicion in the other direction. Hidden in his plans is an insidious plot that could jeopardize not only Soo Ho's life, but Ji-hyun herself. As Ji-hyun searches further, she discovers that the CCTV footage from that night has been tampered with. She relays this information to Soo Ho, and this becomes a pivotal moment for them. They realize that someone inside the company is actively trying to hide the truth, and that person is most likely working in conjunction with Min Suk. Soo Ho and Ji-hyun decide that the time to act covertly and separately is past. Now they must join forces to bring the investigation to a conclusion. Ji-hyun gets deeper and deeper into the investigation, realizing that her life will never be the same again. She decides to quit her job and devote her time to finding the truth. Soo Ho sees her determination and respect for her and begins to feel feelings for her that he never expected to find under the circumstances. However, he realizes that his time is running out and cannot afford to become attached to her. As their investigation progresses, they begin to encounter more and more obstacles. The people they are trying to bring to justice will stop at nothing to protect their secrets. One night, Soo Ho is ambushed by unknown men who threaten him, demanding that he stop investigating. Soo Ho manages to escape the attack, but the event further emphasizes the gravity of the danger he and Ji-hyun are in. Realizing that they are now playing against time and very powerful adversaries, Soo Ho and Ji-hyun begin to act more decisively. Soo Ho takes measures to ensure Ji-hyun's safety, realizing that her life is in as much danger as his. However, his health is increasingly failing him, and he increasingly wonders if he will make it to the end in time. Soon they receive a key piece of information. Min Seok was involved in the events of that night and played no small part in covering up the evidence. This news comes as a shock to Ji-hyun, as Min Seok was someone she considered a friend and ally. Now that the truth is coming out, Ji-hyun and Soo Ho realize that the final battle for justice is just around the corner. Soo Ho and Ji-hyun, finding themselves on the cutting edge of an investigation, are plunged into the fog of lies and danger that envelops their lives. The sense of impending doom becomes increasingly overwhelming for Soo Ho, especially as his condition worsens each day. He begins to feel weakness and attacks of pain more and more frequently, but he stubbornly hides it from Ji-hyun, determined that his physical infirmity should not be an obstacle to the truth. When Ji-hyun learns of Min Seok's involvement in her sister's death, she feels a fire of pain and betrayal ignite inside her. The man she thought was a trusted and loyal friend turned out to be just another puppet in a cruel game. This discovery breaks her heart, but it also strengthens her resolve to see it through. She can no longer afford to be weak, but is now driven by her thirst for justice and her desire to do everything she can to ensure that Ji-hyun's death does not go unpunished. Soon Soo Ho finally pulls himself together and confesses to Ji-hyun that his condition is critical and he has very little time left. He tells her about his diagnosis and how he's been hiding the truth for so long, not wanting to burden her with his problem. This news shocks Ji-hyun. She begins to realize that their time is limited not only by threats from the outside, but also those that lurk within Soo Ho himself. For Ji-hyun, this confession comes as a real blow. Hundreds of thoughts flash through her mind, but the one that scares her the most is that she might lose another person close to her. However, when she sees Soo Ho's determination to follow through no matter what, she decides that she has no right to give up. Instead of feeling sorry for him, she decides to support and help him in the remaining time, as their every step is now worth its weight in gold. Meanwhile, Min Seok, realizing that his game has been exposed, goes on the offensive. He begins to use his connections and influence to destroy everything he and Soo Ho have been trying to build. He has information at his disposal that could hurt Soo Ho and his family, and he's not afraid to use it. Min Seok is playing his own game, and now his main goal is not only to keep his position but to destroy those who dare to go against him. Soo Ho and Ji-hyun realize that Min Seok is willing to do anything to cover up his crimes, and they need to act fast. They start looking for new evidence that could ruin Min Seok's plans. They find several documents that indicate Min Seok's involvement in the company's financial fraud. However, the more they delve into the investigation, the more they realize that not only the truth is at stake, but also their own lives. Soo Ho and Ji-hyun realize that Min Seok is willing to do anything to cover up his crimes, and they need to act fast. They start looking for new evidence that could ruin Min Seok's plans. They find several documents that indicate Min Seok's involvement in the company's financial fraud. However, the more they delve into the investigation, the more they realize that not only the truth is at stake, but also their own lives. Ji-hyun and Soo Ho decide to take a risk and use all the resources at their disposal to bring Min Seok to justice. They arrange a meeting with a key witness, a corporate employee who knows more than he is willing to admit. This man has long been under Min Suk's influence, but now, faced with the inevitability of justice, he agrees to help Soo Ho and Ji-hyun. In this meeting, new details of that fateful night are revealed, and a picture gradually emerges that leads them to realize that Ji-hyun's death was not just an accident, but a carefully planned crime. However, the danger is not over yet. Min Seok, realizing that his plans are on the verge of collapse, decides to go to extreme measures. He orders his men to eliminate anyone who might get in his way, including Soo Ho and Ji-hyun. Realizing that time is running out, Soo Ho and Ji-hyun decide not to delay the final battle. Soo Ho, despite his deteriorating health, plans to organize a public expose of Min Seok so that he has no chance of avoiding responsibility. The crucial moment arrives, and that evening, Soo Ho and Ji-hyun gather everyone involved for an important meeting at the company office. Soo Ho feels the pain and weakness getting the better of him, but he decides that he must see this through, even if it costs him his last bit of strength. Ji-hyun supports him, seeing that he's willing to sacrifice everything for justice. When Min Seok arrives at the meeting, he's ready for any tactic to hold on to his power. But Soo Ho and Ji-hyun find themselves one step ahead. The forces are ready to take him into custody, and they present irrefutable evidence of his crimes. Min Seok tries to get away with it, but his plan is crumbling before his eyes. Soo Ho, despite his suffering, remains firm and determined until the very end. Min Seok is arrested, his dark deeds are exposed, and the truth about Ji-hyun's death finally comes out. Soo Ho and Ji-hyun have survived this journey together, and even though Soo Ho knows he doesn't have much time left, he feels like he's finally been able to do something truly important with his life. Ji-hyun, seeing his determination and dedication, feels that she was able to find in him not only an ally, but a man who could change her life forever. After Min Seok's exposure and arrest, it seems that the truth has finally prevailed and justice has been served. However, Soo Ho and Ji-hyun realize that the victory is far from final. Behind Min Seok's shadow are even more powerful figures who are interested in keeping the true criminals at large. Now it's up to them to deal with these dangerous people in order to completely finish the job. Soo Ho's condition is rapidly deteriorating, but he perseveres. Every day is a challenge for him, as his strength fades and the disease takes more and more of his vitality. Despite this, Soo Ho is determined to help Ji-hyun and see their mission through to the end, even if it takes the last of his strength. A deeper and deeper bond develops between them. Ji-hyun begins to notice Soo Ho changing from a cold and cynical businessman to a man who genuinely cares for her and is willing to make sacrifices for the truth. But she's afraid of losing him as she sees the disease eating away at him from the inside. For the first time in a long time, Ji-hyun lets herself feel that she cares for this man, and she dreads the moment when he will no longer be around. Soo Ho, realizing that he doesn't have much left, makes the decision to close all his business and prepare his company and loved ones for his departure. He devises a plan to protect Ji-hyun and the company from possible attacks from his enemies. He meets with key employees, appoints new managers, and hands over instructions that should preserve his legacy after his death. At this point, Soo Ho realizes that despite his futile resistance to fate, he has still managed to find meaning in the time he has left to help Ji-hyun and leave something meaningful behind. Meanwhile, Ji-hyun begins to investigate on her own, trying to identify those behind Min Seok. She decides to reach out to the people who once helped her family, but have pulled away over time, fearing for their lives. In the process, she finds an old friend, Ji-hyun, who turns out to be willing to tell the truth about that night. Ji-hyun learns that Ji-hyun wanted to pass on important information compromising the company's management, and so her death was planned in advance. With the new evidence, Ji-hyun returns to Soo Ho. Together they decide to organize one last meeting with the influential figures to personally expose their crimes. The meeting is scheduled at the corporation building, and they prepare for the final step that should put an end to the story. Soo Ho realizes that this may be his last chance to protect Ji-hyun and spare her from the hardships of the past, but he also knows that this meeting may be his last. On the appointed day, Soo Ho and Ji-hyun arrive at the office where all the key players are gathered. In this tense moment, Soo Ho reveals all the cards, presenting evidence and testimonies that expose those who have been hiding behind Ji-hyun's death. He addresses the audience with grit and determination despite his deteriorating condition. Ji-hyun stands by his side, feeling that this is their last fight, and realizes that Soo Ho is not only doing this for her sake, but also to clear his name and atone for his mistakes. However, the situation escalates when one of the attendees, a powerful man with extensive connections, realizes that his plans have been revealed and orders his men to eliminate the threat. Soo Ho finds himself in the crosshairs, at which point Ji-hyun realizes how close the danger is. But instead of fleeing, Soo Ho takes the hit, saving Ji-hyun from imminent death. His body is weakening, but he finds the last of his strength to protect her and finish what he started. Soo Ho lies there, exhausted and dying, but with a sense of accomplishment. Ji-hyun is by his side, her eyes full of tears, but they are also filled with strength and determination to go on with her life, knowing that he has given her a chance for a future. Soo Ho, despite his inevitable fate, smiles, feeling that he did everything he could to right his wrongs and give Ji-hyun a chance at peace. After the dramatic events that took place at the company office, Soo Ho and Ji-hyun's life becomes a complicated and dangerous game where the stakes become higher and higher. Soo Ho, despite his critical diagnosis, continues to fight for justice even though his strength is running out. Every morning he wakes up with the realization that it could be his last, but this only strengthens his determination to finish what he started. Ji-hyun, shocked by what happened and how close they came to the edge, is still reeling from the shock of what she saw. Soo Ho, who literally sacrificed himself for her, becomes not just a partner in her fight for the truth, but someone much more. She realizes that their bond goes beyond mere cooperation. It's something deeper, something that unites them on an emotional level despite all the suffering they've been through. Along with that, however, comes the realization that the danger is not yet over. The people behind Min Suk's crimes are still at large, and after realizing that their secrets have been revealed, they begin to act more aggressively. They use all their resources to silence Soo Ho and Ji-hyun once and for all. Soo Ho's condition continues to deteriorate rapidly. His weakness becomes more and more obvious, and even Ji-hyun, seeing his daily suffering, can no longer turn a blind eye to the fact that time is inexorably passing. Soo Ho tries to hide his agony, not wanting Ji-hyun to worry even more, but it's becoming almost impossible. He passes out more and more often, and each time Ji-hyun is gripped by the fear that he won't be able to wake up. One night, after another seizure, Soo Ho makes an important decision. He realizes that his time is really running out, and despite his best efforts, he won't be able to finish the job by himself. He decides to hand over all the key documents and evidence to Ji-hyun, explaining to her that she is the one who must now complete their mission. Soo Ho asks her to be strong and not give up even when he's gone. Ji-hyun, shocked by these words, feels an unbearable weight of responsibility fall on her. She realizes that everything depends on her now, and if she falters, everything they've fought for will be in vain. She realizes that everything now depends on her, and that if she fails, everything they have fought for will be in vain. Her heart is filled with a strong resolve, strengthened by the pain of loss and the desire to keep Soo Ho's memory alive as a man who, despite his sins, found the strength to fight for the truth to the end. Meanwhile, Soo Ho and Ji-hyun's enemies are not slumbering. They find out that Soo Ho has given all the important documents to Ji-hyun and decide to strike a decisive blow. They devise a plan to destroy this evidence and eliminate Ji-hyun before she can bring the truth to the public. Min Seok, who is now operating in the shadows, organizes a series of attacks against her, hoping that this will stop her. However, Ji-hyun proves to be much stronger than her enemies expected. Realizing that her life is in danger, she makes the decision to go into hiding and continue her investigation from the underground. She manages to get in touch with a few trusted individuals who are willing to help her in her mission. Among them is an old friend of her family, a former journalist who once investigated corruption schemes and is now willing to support her in her fight against the criminals. Soo Ho, seeing that Ji-hyun is ready to take on this heavy burden, feels both pride for her and a deep regret that he won't be able to be there for her until the end. But he realizes that he's done everything he can do, and now it's her turn to complete their mission together. Ji-hyun, despite all the obstacles and dangers, decides to take a chance and hold a press conference where she intends to reveal the truth and present all the evidence they have gathered. Soo Ho, weakened and no longer able to participate in person, supports her from a distance, knowing that this will be her finest hour. When the day of the conference arrives, Ji-hyun steps in front of the cameras, her voice trembling but determination burning in her eyes. She talks about what her family has been through, the death of her sister, and how Soo Ho, a man she once considered an enemy, helped her find the truth and defend justice. This speech becomes not only a way for her to denounce those responsible, but also a final farewell to Soo Ho, who is in a hospital bed listening to her words. After Ji-hyun revealed the truth to the public, it seemed that justice had been served. However, the victory was far from complete. The people responsible for her sister's death and all the subsequent crimes have yet to be brought to justice. Ji-hyun knows that her journey is not over, and the last and most difficult battle lies ahead. Soo Ho, who witnessed her performance on TV, feels a deep sense of satisfaction, but his condition continues to deteriorate. He realizes that his last days are upon him and prepares for the inevitable. So he decides to spend his remaining time in silence, away from everyone, and hand over control of his company and all its affairs to trustworthy people. His goal is to protect his legacy and make sure that everything he's fought for isn't destroyed. Meanwhile, Ji-hyun is immersed in an investigation to finally expose everyone involved in her sister's death. She realizes that after going public, she has become an even more vulnerable target for her enemies. They make desperate attempts to silence her. But Ji-hyun, strengthened by her determination and Soo Ho's support, keeps going. Ji-hyun finds new evidence that points to the involvement of top people in the corporation, including powerful politicians and businessmen. She decides that she needs to meet these people face to face and bring charges against them. This decision is dangerous, and she is well aware that she may not come out of this fight alive, but she has no other way out. At this point in her life, Min Seok reappears. He's still confident in his integrity, begins to threaten Ji-hyun, trying to use his remaining connections to ruin her life and reputation. He offers her a deal, hoping she will agree to his terms to save her life. However, Ji-hyun firmly refuses, knowing that making a deal with him is a way to betray her sister's memory and everything she fought for. She decides to confront him, even if it means the ultimate confrontation. Soo Ho's condition continues to deteriorate. He feels that his time is truly running out and realizes that he must say goodbye to Ji-hyun. He summons her to his place, and the meeting becomes very emotional for both of them. Soo Ho thanks Ji-hyun for coming into his life and giving him a chance to atone for his sins. He asks her to be strong and continue to fight for the truth, even when he is gone. This meeting becomes a milestone in their relationship. Ji-hyun realizes that her feelings for Soo Ho are much deeper than she thought, and losing him will be a heavy blow to her. However, she realizes that it is her duty to finish what she started, and promises him that she will see it through. Soo Ho, knowing that his last days are upon him, decides to leave the city and spend time in nature where he feels closer to peace. He leaves his affairs in safe hands, says goodbye to his loved ones and sets off on his final journey, where no one can disturb him. Ji-hyun, left alone, continues her struggle. She faces her final obstacles as she tries to find definitive proof against her enemies. She is pursued and followed, but her determination remains unwavering. She realizes that the only way to win is to present all the evidence in court and make the perpetrators answer for their crimes. After recent events that have strengthened Ji-hyun's resolve even more, she realizes that she must now act quickly and decisively. Her enemies continue to advance, but she has one last trump card: irrefutable evidence that could destroy the lives of those behind her sister's death. Ji-hyun prepares for the final battle, realizing it will be the most dangerous and decisive. Meanwhile, Soo Ho, who is in seclusion, struggles with his powers fading. Every day he grows weaker and weaker, and despite being away from the hustle and bustle of the city, his thoughts keep returning to Ji-hyun. He knows that she has to take the final step in their case, and inwardly prays that she will be safe and able to finish what she started. For him, it's a time of reflection and saying goodbye to a life that has been full of mistakes, but also redemption. Meanwhile, Ji-hyun's enemies don't waste any time. Realizing that she is ready to deliver the final blow, they take desperate measures to stop her. Ji-hyun begins to notice that she is being followed everywhere, her phone tapped and her every move tracked. But fear for her life no longer matters to her. She's willing to sacrifice everything for justice. As the tension reaches its peak, Ji-hyun receives an unexpected message from Soo Ho. He, sensing that his end is near, decides to support her one last time. In his message, he expresses his gratitude for her courage and determination, and gives her final instructions. Soo Ho reminds Ji-hyun that her strength is in the truth, and that she must go all the way despite all the threats. These words give her strength and confidence before the decisive step. The day of the press conference arrives. Ji-hyun arrives at the venue where journalists and members of the public are already waiting for her. She walks to the microphone, her voice trembling, but determination burning in her eyes. With all her will in her fist, she begins her speech, detailing everything she has gone through to get to the truth. With every word, she exposes the criminal actions of those who have been hiding the truth for years, and presents the evidence she has gathered that cannot be refuted. Right as she speaks, the police arrive at the building with arrest warrants. Ji-hyun watches with relief as those who once seemed untouchable are released one by one in handcuffs. This is her moment of personal victory, the moment when justice is finally served. However, just when it seems like it's all over, Ji-hyun suddenly feels like she's being watched. In the final seconds of the press conference, she notices a suspicious figure among the crowd. Before she realizes who it is, she suddenly feels a sharp pain as a gunshot rings out through the crowd and Ji-hyun falls to the ground. When Ji-hyun falls to the ground after being shot, the world around her stops for a moment. Everything around her turns into chaos, people screaming, police chasing the shooter, but Ji-hyun doesn't feel it anymore. All she sees in front of her eyes are memories of her sister and moments spent with Soo Ho. Her consciousness gradually fades into darkness, and she loses touch with reality. But fate decides otherwise. Ji-hyun ends up in the hospital where doctors are fighting for her life. The bullet passed near her vital organs, and despite her serious condition, she manages to survive. Soon after the surgery, she regains consciousness. Although she is weak, her body has not yet recovered, but the thought of not finishing what she started makes her fight on. At this time, Soo Ho, in his seclusion, learns of the incident from the news. Despite his condition, he gathers the last of his strength to return to the city. He realizes that Ji-hyun needs his support now more than ever. Soo Ho decides that he can't let her go through this alone. Soo Ho's return is both unexpected and reassuring to Ji-hyun at the same time. When he comes to visit her at the hospital, she sees how much he has weakened, but his presence brings her peace of mind. They talk to each other about what happened, and Soo Ho reassures her that they must keep fighting despite everything. While Ji-hyun recovers, Soo Ho takes charge of the investigation. He realizes that they need to find the person who orchestrated the attack on Ji-hyun. Using his last strength and his remaining connections, he begins his search in an effort to protect her from more assassination attempts. They soon learn that the man behind the attack was someone who had long remained in the shadows, a powerful businessman who feared that exposing Ji-hyun would ruin his career and reputation. Soo Ho and Ji-hyun decide it's time to deal the final blow to this man by exposing him to everyone. Soo Ho's condition is getting worse by the day. He realizes that time is running out, but decides not to tell Ji-hyun so as not to alarm her. Instead, he concentrates all his efforts on finishing their case. Soo Ho does his best to gather the final evidence that would expose their latest enemy. Ji-hyun stays by his side, caring for him and saying goodbye to him every day. Despite her pain, she realizes that their struggle was not in vain, and that Soo Ho has given her not only a chance at justice, but also a chance to feel again what it means to love and be loved. After the arrest of the last of the criminals, it seemed that justice had finally been served, but Ji-hyun realizes that her joy is overshadowed by her inevitable farewell to Soo Ho. His condition deteriorates dramatically, and the doctors no longer offer any hope. Soo Ho stays in the hospital, where he is surrounded by peace and quiet, the only thing he has desired in the past few days. Ji-hyun stays by his side, caring for him and supporting him despite the pain she feels as she watches him fade away. Soo Ho continues to comfort Ji-hyun despite his condition, assuring her that she is strong and will be able to move on with her life despite everything that has happened. He thanks her for giving him meaning in the last few months of his life, for helping him find redemption. Every moment they spend together becomes precious, and Ji-hyun realizes that she must treasure every minute they have left. Meanwhile, Min Seok, who remains at large, makes a last-ditch effort to turn the situation in his favor. He tries to use his connections to get away with it, but public pressure and the evidence collected by Ji-hyun and Soo Ho make his efforts futile. In the end, Min Seok realizes that his time is up and accepts the inevitability of his defeat. Ji-hyun and Soo Ho spend their last days together. Their conversations grow deeper, filled with memories of past events, losses and victories. Soo Ho asks Ji-hyun not to forget him, but also not to let the sadness break her. He wants her to live on, carrying the love and strength they had together in her heart. After saying goodbye to Soo Ho, Ji-hyun's life is filled with silence and loneliness, but she decides not to let the pain consume her. Keeping the memory of Soo Ho in her heart, she finds the strength to move forward, because that's what he wanted for her. Ji-hyun returns to her normal life, but her view of the world has changed forever. She now realizes how fragile time is and how important it is to appreciate every moment. With the help of her allies and the instructions Soo Ho left behind, Ji-hyun takes on the task of finishing all the cases they started together. She completes the trials, brings all the criminals to justice, and soon justice catches up with everyone involved in her sister's death. Despite numerous obstacles, Ji-hyun successfully resists pressure and threats, bringing justice closer every day. However, despite her apparent success, Ji-hyun continues to feel empty. Her life is filled with routine, and although she makes progress, the joy of those accomplishments pales without Soo Ho. Memories of him often come to her, reminding her of the times they were together and how much he changed her life. At this time, Ji-hyun receives an unexpected letter. It turns out that Soo Ho had made sure to leave her a message in advance in case he was gone. In the letter, he thanks her for everything they've been through together and asks her to go on with her life without looking back. He also leaves her some personal advice and guidance that should help her deal with the pain of loss. This letter becomes a new lease on life for Ji-hyun. She realizes that Soo Ho wanted her to not only complete their common endeavor, but also find happiness for herself. Inspired by his words, she decides she has no right to betray his wish and begins to plan for her future. As time passes, Ji-hyun finds a new rhythm in her life. She sets up her home and continues to work at the newspaper, but something inside her still lingers. The memory of Soo Ho remains vivid, and she feels she must do something more to complete their story together. Her thoughts often go back to unfinished business, to the people who helped her and Soo Ho through difficult times, and to those who may still need justice. During this period, Ji-hyun decides to visit Soo Ho's family. She feels it would be the right thing to do to honor his memory and express her gratitude for all he has done. Meeting Soo Ho's family proves to be emotionally difficult. His parents, who have had a hard time dealing with the loss of their son, find the strength to accept Ji-hyun and listen to her. She tells them about Soo Ho's last days, how he was and how he strived to atone for his sins. Soo Ho's parents thank her for all she has done for their son, and recognize that because of her, Soo Ho found meaning in the last moments of his life. This encounter helps Ji-hyun find inner peace. She realizes that Soo Ho wouldn't want her to suffer, and that his parents now carry his memory as well. After the meeting, she feels that one of the last knots tying her to the past has been untied. However, her peace is soon shattered by the news that one of Soo Ho's longtime enemies who went unpunished is active again. This man, once lurking in the shadows, is now trying to regain his lost ground by taking advantage of the fact that people have forgotten his crimes. Ji-hyun feels she can't stay away. She realizes that she must intervene to finish what she started and prevent evil from rearing its head again. Ji-hyun plunges back into the investigation. She starts gathering information and communicating with people who could help her expose the man. The process proves to be difficult and dangerous as her adversary has considerable influence and connections. But Ji-hyun's determination is unwavering. She knows that if she doesn't stop him now, he could ruin innocent people's lives again. Using her skills and experience gained from past battles, Ji-hyun gradually finds clues that may lead to the unmasking of the culprit. She contacts Soo Ho's former allies and asks for their help. Together, they devise a plan to bring this man to light and bring him to justice. Working on the investigation becomes a kind of therapy for Ji-hyun. She realizes that she is paying tribute to Soo Ho and continuing his work. Ji-hyun regains the strength and determination that drove her when she fought for justice for her sister and Soo Ho. Ji-hyun faces new threats during the investigation, but this only strengthens her resolve. She realizes that Soo Ho's last words, his guidance and support, all help her through the difficult moments. She no longer feels alone because she knows that his spirit is always there to guide and protect her. Gradually, Ji-hyun's investigation comes to a climax. She finds key information that could become crucial evidence in the case against her enemy. Ji-hyun decides it's time for the final step to publicly expose him and bring him to trial. She will have to use all her courage and determination to bring the case to a close and put an end to this man's atrocities forever. Ji-hyun, having gathered all the evidence, prepares for the final blow to her enemy. Her determination grows stronger every day as she knows that this final step will not only complete the case she started with Soo Ho, but will also be the culmination of her personal journey to justice. However, tensions rise as the enemy feels threatened and begins to act aggressively, doing everything in his power to eliminate Ji-hyun before she can follow through. One evening, while returning home, Ji-hyun notices that she is being followed. The situation becomes dangerous, and she realizes that her life is in real danger. But instead of fear, she feels a rush of adrenaline and determination. Her years of struggle and loss have hardened her, and now she is ready to take on any challenge. She decides she won't back down and continues to prepare for the reveal. Ji-hyun contacts trusted allies to coordinate her actions. She realizes that this final move must be carefully considered so that her adversary can't get away with it. They strategize on how to make the information public and prevent any attempts to hide the truth. Meanwhile, the enemy, realizing that his position is precarious, decides to strike first. He organizes an assassination attempt on Ji-hyun, trying to get her out of the way once and for all. But thanks to her premonitions and the support of her allies, Ji-hyun manages to escape. This incident only strengthens her resolve, because now she knows that the enemy is willing to do anything to protect her interests. As Ji-hyun steps up to the microphone, she feels everyone's eyes on her. In that moment, she realizes that her journey has brought her to this moment, a moment when she, after suffering so much loss and hardship, can finally get justice. She presents the evidence, recounts all the crimes that have been committed, and explains why they should not go unpunished. Her presentation generates a huge response. The journalists and members of the public present are shocked by the truth revealed. Ji-hyun's enemy has no choice but to try to escape, but is arrested on the spot. This moment is the culmination of her entire struggle, her victory, but also a farewell to the past she is leaving behind. After the press conference, Ji-hyun feels devastated but relieved at the same time. She knows that she has completed an important chapter of her life and that she can now move on, knowing that she has done her best. Her journey has been long and difficult, but the memory of Soo-ho and his support has helped her persevere to the end. After the dramatic unmasking and arrest of her last enemy, Ji-hyun returns home feeling that her struggle is finally over. But along with that comes the realization of the emptiness that this finale has left. Her entire life in recent years has been centered around seeking justice, and now that her goals have been achieved, she suddenly feels lost. Everything she's lived for has come to an end, and Ji-hyun realizes that she has to start over, but without the clear purpose that led her before. It's at times like these that she turns back to the memories of Soo-ho. Now that justice has been served, his image becomes a symbol to her that despite the hardships, it is possible to find light even in the darkest moments of life. Soo-ho has given her more than just support. He has helped her realize that the meaning of life is not limited to struggle, that there is room for joy, love, and peace. One day, after waking up early in the morning, Ji-hyun decides that it's time to really move on. She realizes that she can no longer live in the past and must open a new chapter in her life. The memory of Soo-ho will always be with her, but now she must find her own path that will belong to her alone. Inspired by these thoughts, Ji-hyun begins to make plans for the future. The trip brings Ji-hyun new impressions and discoveries. She discovers new cities, meets interesting people, and gradually finds the peace she has been looking for. In each new place, she feels her soul fill with light and joy, and realizes that life really can be beautiful despite the losses. She begins writing again, sharing her thoughts and experiences with others, and it brings her fulfillment and happiness. Months pass and Ji-hyun returns home, already a completely different person. She has changed, becoming stronger and wiser. There is no more room in her life for past fears and pain. Now she is living in the present and building a future. When she returns to her home, she realizes that she no longer feels the heaviness that used to haunt her. Home has become a place of comfort and peace for her, not a reminder of loss. Returning to a new, more peaceful life after her journey, Ji-hyun gradually feels her soul begin to truly heal. For the first time in a long time, she feels free from the pain of the past, ready for the future. But along with that comes the realization that her journey is not yet complete. There is still a desire in her heart to use her experience and knowledge to help others. Her work at the foundation brings her satisfaction and joy. When she meets people who are going through difficult times, Ji-hyun feels that she can pass on to them the strength that she herself once had. She shares her stories with them, helps them find ways out of difficult situations, and helps them believe in themselves again. These women become a new source of inspiration for her, and each success fills her heart with pride and joy. In the process, Ji-hyun faces various challenges, but each time she finds the strength to overcome them. She continues to write articles, sharing the stories of those who have been helped and bringing attention to the problems that still remain in society. These articles resonate with many people, and her work is beginning to bear real fruit. More and more women contact her foundation, and Ji-hyun feels that her life is taking on a new, deeper meaning. Finally, one quiet evening, Ji-hyun sits in her garden, surrounded by the flowers she has grown so fondly. She closes her eyes and breathes in the fresh air, feeling her heart fill with peace. Remembering everything that has happened over the years, she smiles, knowing that she has lived her life with dignity and honor, keeping the memory of those she loved alive and finding her place in the world. In these final moments, Ji-hyun realizes that she has finally found the peace she has been searching for so long. Her life has become full and complete, and now she is ready to face the future with an open heart, knowing that new challenges and new joys lie ahead. Soo-ho will always be with her, but now she knows she can move on, with faith in herself and in the fact that everything they've been through together was not in vain.